Welcome to another Goldmine 101, our regular series of short presentations, little mini training sessions giving you hints and tips for getting the most out of Goldmine CRM. And in this session, I'm going to cover a simple import from Microsoft Excel. So imagine the scenario, you've acquired some data, or maybe you've done some kind of online event, you've got a list of attendees, you want to get those into your Goldmine CRM system and start working on them. So hello, my name is Tim Wilmot and my company Wizard Systems. We're a specialist CRM system supplier who helps small and mid-sized organizations improve their sales productivity, marketing and customer service through the use of simple solutions and affordable solutions like Goldmine. Now this presentation will be about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour or so in duration, just meant to be an overview of the import feature that's included with Goldmine. My company, Wizard Systems, we do offer extensive help for you if you need to explore this in more detail. And importing data into a new system is a big topic on its own. Now, the audio part of this presentation is one way only. If you've got any questions, please type those into the question box on your meeting control panel. I'll do my best to answer those at the end. Also at the end, I'll be giving you an update on any Goldmine product news for you. And this session is being recorded. You will get an email from our system later on with a link to the recording. You can play that back as many times as you want to. And it will be on our YouTube channel as well. So go up to YouTube, search for our channel, Wizard Systems, and you'll see loads of Goldmine videos up there on different topics in and around Goldmine. Okay, brief mention about Wizard Systems. We're a long-standing supplier of Goldmine, one of the top suppliers of Goldmine worldwide. We do other CRMs as well. Goldmine is a key product in our portfolio, and we offer the complete service around Goldmine: installation, upgrades, training, integration, customization, report writing, and we've got a permanently manned help desk service as well, ready to answer your calls. Okay, so let's pop into first of all Microsoft Excel and do a little bit of explaining of the particular steps, the process you might go through in importing typically a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet into Goldmine. The first thing is to do your data preparation. Prepare the data prior to importing it into your Goldmine CRM system. What I mean there is sanitizing it, making it clean, making sure that the columns you've got, all of the data looks correctly formatted. So that if you do have a phone number column, all the entries there are genuine phone numbers and maybe not a company name or a city field that's kind of slipped in there for whatever reason. The second thing is to make sure, now typically the spreadsheet, there is a built-in Excel import into Goldmine, but we find that if you actually transfer, if you actually save this file as a CSV file, you can have a lot more options as regards the import of your data into Goldmine. So typically, we would take this Excel file and we would save it in the format of a CSV, a comma separated values. If we looked at this file in Notepad, then each of these fields would be delimited, probably with a comma, maybe with speech marks as well. Now, having said that, we need to remove any commas that you might see lurking in any field. You may find them in address fields, possibly in the company name field as well. Remove any commas. You can obviously use the Excel find and replace option to make sure that you're stripping out all of those commas that could create issues in the mapping of fields. I'll explain that later on. The third thing to consider, look at these columns and make sure that you are you've satisfied yourself that there is a home for that data to go to. When we come on to mapping, we want to make sure that we've got all these fields in the Goldmine source, in the Goldmine target system. So have a look at typically the row 1 here, column headings, just to make sure that you've got those fields and it is of the right type of data, so that a text field in Excel is going to go to a text field in Goldmine, for example. Another good idea is to make sure that you've got the source or some kind of tag or identifier applied across all of these records that you can map to a Goldmine field, so that if for any reason you had to amend this data or remove this data or do something with it, they are all tagged with some kind of unique value. So these 19, 20 or so records here, when they go into Goldmine, they're all going to have the label, if you like, of test against them. So I can easily create a filter in my Goldmine system of all of these test records and do something with them, globally update them, remove them, add them to another group, whatever I want to do, give them to a salesperson to call them, whatever it might be. So that's step number 1, data preparation, checking the formatting of your spreadsheet, and making sure you've got a home for that data to go to. So once you've done that, let me just close that down. Just save that there. Save that file. Now back into Goldmine, and your import option would be off the file menu there. Normally, you would typically restrict this import process to certain users in your company. You wouldn't want all users with the ability to import records. It's quite, shall I say, more of an advanced feature in Goldmine, and that you wouldn't normally let all your users import data willy-nilly. So it would be controlled by typically the administrator of your Goldmine system. Also make sure that you've done a backup of your Goldmine database before proceeding, because when you import your records in, there's no edit undo. Once the records are in the Goldmine database, they are there. They have to be then removed or amended. So it's a good idea to make sure that you've got a backup of your Goldmine database. So we're going to be importing now this data. Notice that on this wizard, so step by step, Goldmine is taking us through the steps of doing this. On this wizard, we've got a number of different file types to consider. Some of these are rarely used now. For example, SDF and DBF, they're old file formats. So typically, it's going to be this CSV file format, comma separated value. As you go through this process, you can save what you're doing to a profile, an import profile. So if you're coming up a similar import operation in the future, you can save time by referring back to that existing profile. I'm going to create a new one here from scratch. So I just follow this through step by step, this wizard step by step. Second question, what file do we want to import? This is where I'm going to pick up that file that we saw earlier, that CSV file, and open that up. That's now selected. I now click Next to go to the next screen. And this is where I'm now presented with the data in that raw file. So what I'm going to do here now, because it's not displaying any data, it might be that my field delimiter, the character that I'm using to tell Goldmine, this is field number 1, or this is column number 1, this is column number 2, this is column number 3. There would be some kind of character between those. So I need to tell Goldmine where does one field end and the next field begin? What is the character I'm using to delimit these fields from each other? So I click on this options button here. This will allow me to choose that. Now I know in this example it is a field separator is a comma, but I don't have any field delimiters. If I was to see that raw file, there are no speech marks. Goldmine put that in by default. If I just remove that and click OK, I then return to this, this preview screen where I can now see all of those field names. That's row number 1. It might be good practice to remove row number 1 of your Excel spreadsheet before continuing. But I can now click this little next button here, do you see? And I can browse through these records one by one as I go through. All right, there's all my records as I'm going through. Now, Goldmine has applied a sequential label name. This will be important to assist you in the mapping process in the next stage. So it would be good practice here to, if I go back to my first row and just double click in this label number 1 here, double click there and overwrite that label 001 to something as you want to refer it to when you come to mapping fields. So this one is the first name. So we'll just type in first there for speed. Click OK. And then the next one, label 2, we'll call that last name or surname, doesn't really matter. Label 3 is the company field. So just type in company there. Label 4 is city. It's not imperative that you give these label names the exact same field name as they are in Goldmine, but it could help in the mapping process. So I know, for example, that postcode deep down in Goldmine is called zip. That should automatically find a home to go to. Label 6 is phone 1. We may have multiple phone numbers that we're importing, of course. Label 7 is, let me just double click there, is email address, and the source, label 8. Let's just go back to that one there and type in email on label 7, and we're good to go. So we've applied some names to those labels, to those columns. So I just click next. This is now where I'm going to be mapping. This is an important step in the process. I'm mapping the source fields over here on the left-hand side to the target Goldmine fields on the right-hand side. So I can use that scroll bar there to scroll up and down these fields that appear in alphabetical order. But I can just, you might be able to detect that these fields are grayed out, and because I've got a very similar, or if not identical, name to the source field, to the target field, it's found a match already. So I just double click that, and that will find that mapping, that will create that mapping for me straight away. Second one, company. Well, it's found that already. Double click there, job done. Email is mapped to email address, double click there. Now, first and last, Goldmine has one field for the combination of the first name and the last name. What you do here is a nice little trick in Goldmine. If I go up to the contact field, so this is the field in Goldmine where you will see the combination of the first name and the last name, the person's full name. If I double click on first of all, that's popped that in. And I now need to reselect that contact field and double click on last name. What that's doing is it's adding the first name and the last name together with a little blank space between the two, all right? You can actually go further than this and actually create some nice little expressions around that if you wanted to. But anyway, phone number one, map that to phone number one is found that straight away. Source to source and postcode to postcode. Now, just to double check that you're doing things correctly, as well as showing the mappings, I could also preview the results. Like the previous screen, this is where we can now scroll through all of that data. Let's just go up to those key fields there, city, company name, contact name, and you can see I've got those mapped correctly. I can preview those, just scroll through them, and so on. If you're happy with that, then we go to the next stage. We click next in the wizard. This is where we can apply a profile name. We can save this for later use if we're likely to regularly get data from this source in the identical format. We could save a lot of time by creating a profile there. Hit next. And if I was to hit finish, that now will import your data. It will be imported in the background. Your users can still be using Goldmine, no problem at all. Maybe if you've got a very, very large database, you may want to run that out of office hours, but certainly small imports would not impact the performance of your Goldmine system. And those users, your Goldmine users, will instantly see the data. It's being run in a little background process in Goldmine. So that simply is the import there. A simple overview of importing from Excel via a CSV format, a comma separated value format, and thinking about the data preparation first, getting your data right, making sure that the columns look right, that all of the data is of the correct format. So typically, for example, you might find that if you've got a phone number column, sometimes that might be interpreted with loads of numbers in there and no dashes or brackets. The Excel system could interpret that as a numeric field. So you want to make sure that you're creating that as a text column in Excel. That will certainly help you with the correct formatting of the data when it's imported into a CRM system. So getting the data right, preparing the data, and then making sure you've got these fields for this data to be mapped to, and then in the import wizard in Goldmine, going through, making sure that you can preview the source data, scroll through a few records, make sure they're okay, and then the all-important mapping of those fields, one to the other, to complete the process. Before all that, make sure you've done a backup. Please make sure you've done a backup of your Goldmine database. Contact Wizard Systems if you don't know how to do a Goldmine backup. It's really easy, it's very fast, and it could save you time if you've made a mistake on your import, or you've got duff data for whatever reason, blank rows in your Excel spreadsheet. There might be a few reasons where you haven't been 100% diligent, shall I say, and some little errors might have crept into your import. You may need to start again. So hopefully that's been of interest to you. A simple import into Goldmine, and as we do on our 101 sessions, open this out to any questions you may have around this feature of importing. So pop those questions please into your questions section. Looks like there's a couple of questions that have come through. So Callum, if I've got two spreadsheets, would I import them one by one or amalgamate them? Well, if they're of a similar format, try and amalgamate them. It's going to save you time on the mapping. But if they are radically different in, well, the columns, then probably you would treat those as two separate ones there, two separate imports. Andrew, I want to add data to records already imported. How do I do that? Right. So I guess that might happen where you're subscribing to data. Maybe you're subscribing to some industry sector data into your CRM database, and typically you might get updates from the data provider. That might be the reason why you're doing that. Yes, so on the import wizard, there's a profile options button. I didn't show that, but basically that's where you can define a matching field. So if there was some kind of unique identifier, maybe a company ID number or something like that, then you can use that to match so that your new data will be overwriting the existing data in Goldmine, or you're creating new records for data that we didn't find a match. So that's how you would do that. Just thinking the other scenario where that might occur, where you're importing records that might already exist in Goldmine. Maybe you've done a bit of data cleansing outside of Goldmine, so you've exported the records out of Goldmine with the unique identifier, the account number for every Goldmine record. Goldmine has a field called the account number, nothing to do with financial accounts, but it's a unique record that the users normally never see, but it's a unique field entry for all records that uniquely identify it. So as you re-import the data back into Goldmine, if you still have that account number field against all your records, no problem. The new data can be used to append and overwrite your existing records. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions coming through. So just to keep you up to date with latest news, we're still in sort of semi-lockdown in the UK. So all our training is online at the moment. If you've got any requirements for training, maybe you just come off furlough, your staff have come off furlough and you want to give them some Goldmine training, please contact us for more information on that. Be happy to assist you. Maybe need some brush up skills to get back into the swing of things with Goldmine. The latest release of Goldmine is 2019.1, hotfix number 3. So we have these major releases of Goldmine and then hotfixes along the way. Now we do have 2020 coming out, we believe, next week. This was delayed for a few weeks because of the postponement of Google's and Microsoft plans to introduce their extra level of email security. This email security has now been built into Goldmine 2020. So if you're emailing from Goldmine, this is a very important update for you. And we will include a full rundown of this latest version, Goldmine 2020, on a future 101 session, maybe next week, maybe the week after. So stay tuned for that. To get these latest releases of Goldmine, you've got to be on a maintenance contract, so please contact us for details. If you have an older version of Goldmine, if you're using Goldmine for email, then strongly recommend this 2020 upgrade to keep your Goldmine system nice and secure and compatible with Google and Microsoft. So that's it for this week's session. Thanks very much for those of you attending live. Thanks for watching this if you're watching a recording. If you've got any suggestions for future topics that would be of interest to the Goldmine community, then I'd love to hear from you. So my name is Tim Wilmot. Email address tim@wizard-systems.com. There's all of our other contact details there, including our YouTube channel, Wizard Systems, where you will see a Goldmine playlist, well over 100 videos up there on different topics in and around CRM. So Thanks very much for attending and watching this, and we'll catch up with you same time next week. Thanks very much indeed, and bye-bye.